What would you get if you took Warframe, removed the spaceships and a lot of the sci-fi, and instead replaced it with fantasy and a more vibrant, stylized art style? Well, you'd get Wayfinder. If that has you curious, you're not alone. Players lined up to play this game and see what it was all about. Right now, the game is available to play in early access, and it looks like people love it. To make things even more interesting, it's also got some incredibly unique tricks up its sleeve. So let's talk about what Wayfinder's like now that we're a month separated from its launch. Wayfinder is being published by Digital Extremes, the same company that developed Warframe, making the comparisons between the two almost unavoidable. It's developed by Airship Syndicate, who you might recognize from games like Darksiders Genesis. Wayfinder is a character-based, co-op action RPG that is available to play right now in its early access on PC, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. So let's talk about what Wayfinder is, what it isn't, and why there are so many people jumping in to try out the early access as we speak. And a massive shout out to Airship Syndicate for sponsoring this video. First, Wayfinder has you choose between 3 heroes, Wingrave, Silo, and Nis. Each hero has its own set of abilities for you to choose from. You can have 4 of these abilities equipped at any given moment. These 4 abilities are locked to that character, so that character that you choose kind of acts like a sort of class would in other games. Beyond that, your character will have a weapon that comes with its own unique ability. The most common misunderstanding I see people make when jumping in is assuming that the weapon that the character starts with is the only weapon it can use. So don't be fooled by the start screen. Just because Wingrave is sporting a sword and shield here doesn't mean that you couldn't choose Nis and put the sword and shield on her instead, or that you couldn't choose Wingrave and slap daggers or a ranged weapon on him. What you're really choosing on the start screen is not the weapon that you're going to use, it's the character and the associated skills that they come with. You'll be able to unlock and collect the characters you don't choose later while you're playing the game. Once you get into the game, you can now choose to seek out any weapon you want and slap it on the character. Not only that, you'll be able to seek out more heroes to add to your stable of characters. If you've played Warframe, think of it like that. Wingrave, Silo, and Nis are kind of like Warframes you play. If you haven't played Warframe, basically the way this works is you're going to collect lots of these characters by hunting down the materials needed to summon them, much like players hunted down materials needed to craft their next Warframe in Warframe. Different pieces and different materials for each character and weapon are scattered throughout the game, encouraging you to kill a variety of bosses while participating in a variety of different content. Right now, there are over 20 different weapons, each with its own unique weapon ability. What this means is that 2 greatswords will play differently from one another, while 2 different sword and shield sets will also play differently from one another because they've each got a unique ability tied to them. As a result, you aren't just choosing a weapon type, but you're further customizing your build by choosing the weapon type and then choosing the weapon in that category that has the cool ability that you're after. And this is going to be just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to your character customization. On top of that, the game features dodging, blocking, double jumping, and an optional tab target mode for players that prefer that. It has fluid, fast-paced combat, beautiful lands to explore, and epic boss fights to conquer. I haven't played anything quite like Wayfinder, so let's talk about what it's like to actually play the game. Once you've chosen your hero, you'll play through a quick tutorial. Nothing too scary here. You'll learn the basics like how to attack, how to use your abilities, how to dodge, and all that good stuff. After you complete this, you're dropped into Skylight. This town will now be your hub. It's got merchants, vendors, quest-giving NPCs, and even a hub for future dungeon running. But we'll get into that in a moment. Right away, you can see that they've put a lot of work into the art and the aesthetic of the game. The town is detail-rich, with not an ounce of space left unaccounted for. Now, let's talk about what's outside, the open world content. Alright, so it's time to leave the safety and the warm embrace of the town you found yourself in. If you head to the back of town, you arrive at the Great Lift. The Great Lift is an enormous lift that takes you down to the dangerous and beautiful open world zone known as the Highlands. The Highlands are filled with friends, enemies, and events for you to discover. While you explore the Highlands, you'll find crafting materials to make new weapons as well as to unlock new heroes. You'll also find dungeons that you can unlock and then add to your stable of dungeons that you can run anytime from town. That's what this little area here in town is for. It lets you queue up for any dungeon that you found out in the Highlands without having to run all the way back to that dungeon to queue up for it. It's a nice system that works really well and plays real smooth. While exploring, you'll have the option to follow the main story quests or any number of side quests that you discover. Being a completionist, I found myself trying to tackle any and all side quests that I could. I appreciated that most of the quests are voice acted, which definitely helps to keep you immersed in the game while you explore the vibrant world. I also love that the game is brand new. There isn't a meta yet. Everyone's trying everything right now, and it's so fun to see that happening and to talk with friends about what you're experimenting with and how it's it's going. These early days in these types of games are always my favorite. The sense of wonder is still there, and no one knows what's going to happen next or what's around the next corner. While you're out exploring the Highlands, you'll discover events that will often encourage you to group up with other players nearby to take down a difficult set of monsters, maybe a boss with various waves of ads spawning in. If you successfully take it down, you're rewarded with those ever important currencies and materials that you'll need to make your character stronger, as well as experience for leveling your character and your weapons up. That's correct, you heard that right. You are able to level both your character and your weapons in this game. The zone is laid out in a way that offers a good sense of exploration and verticality. You might decide to walk over a hill, or you might decide to wander into a cave system beneath it instead. While exploring the world, you can also gather resources like you can in many open world games. In my time playing, I never found that I had too many resources, as there was always some gear to upgrade or weapons to craft. But probably the most important thing you're discovering while you're out in the open world is those lost zones we touched on earlier. So let's talk about what lost zones are, how they impact the game, and why they're awesome. On your journey, you'll get a dagger that allows your character to hop into what are known as lost zones. Lost zones are Wayfinder's version of dungeons. However, Wayfinder has added a twist. Every time you go into a lost zone, it's a new experience, as parts of the dungeon are procedurally pieced together, making them less predictable and more replayable. Beyond that, you can run each dungeon on different tiers of difficulty. As you'd imagine, as the difficulty increases, so do the rewards. At launch, there are 9 different dungeons with nearly countless different combinations. While you're running these dungeons, there are of course enemies to slay, but also secret corridors to find, hidden treasures to discover, and even secret bosses to unlock. You are very much rewarded for keeping an eye open for a secret path veering off to the side of the main walkway, or a barricade that looks like it could be broken. So for me personally, when I wanted to slow down and focus on finding all of the secrets in the dungeon, I would sometimes choose to solo it so that I could go at my own pace and be as thorough as I wanted. To add further variations to the dungeons, they also added an imbuement system. This allows you to add modifiers to the dungeon that will alter it as you run through. For instance, greed will put piles of gold on the floor, but for every pile you pick up, you'll take more damage. These types of imbuments can make for a fun and rewarding romp through a dungeon that you've already run before. So each imbuement has a different impact on the dungeon as you run through it, but it doesn't stop there. Beyond that, you can combine different imbuments to get even more variations. Each combination of imbuments will bring with it new effects unique to that combination. Different imbuement combinations lead to different rewards that you can then use to try and farm epic new weapons that you want to wield, or that epic new hero that you want to try. As mentioned, you can run these dungeons solo or in a group. I really enjoyed doing it both ways. In a group, we tended to romp through it quickly, while solo, I tended to make sure I found every nook and cranny hidden inside. Every dungeon is capped off with a boss fight that has many different difficulty levels based on what tier you chose and what imbuments you added. The lost zones are definitely where you're going to spend a lot of time, and as such, you can tell the developer has taken great care to make sure they're as varied and replayable as possible. Sometimes these lost zones are really long dungeons, and other times you'll land right in front of a boss fight. These bosses will have unique mechanics for you to figure out and outplay, and they'll also have different phases that change those mechanics as the boss's health gets lower. Thanks to the snappy combat, countering and dodging these boss attacks feels incredibly satisfying. So far, this leaves you with 4 character abilities and 1 weapon ability for a total of 5 abilities at your disposal at any time. Then there's the echo system, which works a lot like mods from Warframe. You can slot echoes into your armor, your weapons, and your accessories. As your character and your weapons level up, you'll be able to slot more echoes into each. Accessories don't level, so they have a fixed slot capacity. Each echo has its own unique bonuses, allowing you to try tons of different combinations. This is a big part of where your build will become both powerful and unique. You'll find echoes everywhere while you're out exploring and dungeon diving throughout the game. You'll unlock more slots for echoes as your character progresses. You can browse your echoes you've collected and swap them in and out freely. Each echo belongs to one of 5 echo types: attack, which grants offensive bonuses; guard, which grants defensive bonuses; balance, which boosts both offense and defense; cross type, which grants larger bonuses at a larger cost; and rush, which grants special effects and properties to your character. Much like mods in Warframe, each slot comes in these same 5 types. While you can put any echo in any slot type, if you match the echo type with the echo slot type, you'll reduce the cost by half. Finally, you can fuse echoes together to make them stronger before slotting them in. All of this should sound very familiar to a Warframe player, and this system has worked really well for that game. Beyond that, you'll have your affinity system. This allows you to increase your affinity with your gear and your weapon. You can choose between instinct, discipline, and focus for each. These will increase multipliers for the values represented by the affinity that you chose. So choosing discipline would increase your crit rating shooting and your grip power, while instinct would increase your weapon power and your ability power. At key affinity levels, you unlock perks for that affinity. For instance, if I get instinct to level 5, my healing pulse will be 20% stronger. Finally, we have the mastery system. Each Wayfinder starts with its signature weapon class unlocked, but you can master any weapon on any Wayfinder. Wingrave started with sword and shield mastery, but once I put a greatsword on him, he began leveling his executioner melee mastery. As this mastery levels up, it unlocks 3 different talent classes. I could choose stalwart, heavy hitter, or inertia, and grab the associated passives listed below. For instance, heavy hitter would increase the effectiveness of my heavy attacks as I level it up. As you can see, build customization is insanely deep in Wayfinder. Wayfinder also definitely features some MMO-light features, kind of like housing. So let's take a second to head back to town and talk about that housing system. The Wayfinder housing system is pretty robust. Not only can you decorate your house to your own taste, but you can also find artifacts to place in it. These artifacts will provide buffs for your character, and the number of artifacts that you can have in your house providing buffs is determined by the size of your house. So it sounds like there's going to be a variety of different house sizes for your character to unlock and to decorate. The developers have even talked about how they're going to be adding guild housing in the game in the future, so that should be really interesting to follow as well. Also important in these types of games is character customization, not just customizing your character's build, which you can absolutely do in this game, but also customizing the way your character looks. Now, while in Wayfinder you do choose between some predetermined characters, that doesn't mean that you can't customize your character to make it your own. In fact, far from it. You can customize your armor, you can customize your weapons, and once you've chosen those, you can customize the dye sections and choose primary dyes, secondary dyes, trim dyes, and even emissive dye colors, which is going to change the glow of your armor. And by the way, if you need your armor trimmed, let me know, guys. I'll hook you up. As far as unlocking these cosmetics go, one way to do so is to participate in the Tower Pass, which has tons of unlockables. You can unlock cosmetics, dyes, emotes, materials, and more by progressing through the Tower Pass, which is acting as sort of a battle pass for the game seasons. You can even participate in this without spending money, though purchasing the pass will give you more keys to spend in here. All in all, Wayfinder is shaping up to be a fun fantasy take on the Warframe formula. It is in early access now, and it's got a lot more planned for the future. It feels like this is truly just the tip of the iceberg as far as what's planned and what's coming ahead. If you think you might enjoy the game as much as I have been, be sure to click on the link down in the description below to get exclusive rewards for signing up during early access. Thanks so much for watching, and a massive shout out to my channel members. Thank you for supporting the channel in the big way that you do. If you want to become a channel member, click the join button below for access to a private Discord channel, behind the scenes footage, and more. Thanks for watching, and if you're not sure what to do next, check out this video that the YouTube algorithm thinks you'll like next.